Karan, hi. It's a pleasure to have you with us. How have you been?
Thank you so much, Ashu. Doing well. Thank you so much for having me here.
I hope COVID has been, kind in the sense that no, I mean, everybody is safe at work, at home.
So I don't think there was anybody who was untouched by the second wave this time, directly or indirectly.
Right.
Um, I have seen a lot of my team members going down. I've seen a lot of my team members losing their near and dear ones. Even I lost a family member. So the second wave was very lethal for all of us, I believe.
It was, and let's hope and pray to God that the third wave, things aren't as serious as they were in the second wave, right?
Right. Keeping
Uh,
fingers crossed. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, all of us, right? Karan, this is a very interesting discussion that we're headed into, right? I think this is a discussion that I've been particularly looking forward to, right? And largely because we've been discussing on the massive Bharat opportunity which is kind of unfolding, right? And I think everybody's been talking about it, raving about it. And I think there are very few businesses who've really touched Bharat in that sense, right? Who had the opportunity to understand the psyche of the consumer at that level, right? Pariksha is very uniquely positioned in that sense, right? Because you're dealing with the aspiration of Bharat, right?
Right.
Which just helps you understand the consumer at a very different level. And I would love to discuss some of those aspects, right? The psychology of the customer at the at that layer of India, right? I would love to discuss some of those bits and pieces, right? But before we jump into that discussion, right? Why don't you take me through your the professional career that you've had, right? A quick round of introduction will be helpful, and from there we jump into the questions.
So I'm a soldier's son. Lived all over the country. Every 2 years, my father used to get posted to a new station. I had to
Right,
make friends. So I think I studied all over the country, but then finally fell in love with Pune. Pune, as you
right,
know, is a great place to live. Nice weather, really warm and friendly people. So
right,
decided to set base here. I did my law from Symbiosis Law School, then did MBA from again Symbiosis SIBM.
right,
My father was very kind. He never pushed me to pursue a particular career path,
right,
right? I come from armed forces background. Everybody in my family is in armed forces.
right,
I'm sure deep down somewhere he would have wanted me to be a soldier, but he was kind enough to allow me to pursue my dream.
right,
And I wanted to do something different because
right,
every single individual in my family is in the armed forces. So I thought, let
right,
me try to do something else.
right,
Um, and I fell in love with Pune for more than one reason, and I was looking for an opportunity to stay back.
right,
That's when the entire idea of starting my own venture came. But at that time, I
right,
was a rookie, right? Nobody in my family even had a demat account. Forget about doing business. Everybody from armed forces. Then I'm a
right,
Rajput. So my father told me, business बनियों का काम होता है, हमसे नहीं होगा. But it's your call. But
right,
he was kind. I'm sure you would have seen that movie, Bunty or Bubbly.
right.
Abhishek Bachchan and Rani Mukherjee.
Yes,
So there is a very famous dialogue in that, ऐसा कोई सगा नहीं जिसको हमने ठगा नहीं. So I was starting an entrepreneur, and I had no idea
right,
from where to raise capital, how to build a company. Right, there was
right,
no to guide and mentor me.
right,
I went to a computer shop, and this guy who used to run that computer shop, he was a chartered accountant,
right,
and he told me, "What do you do?" So I told him, "I'm an entrepreneur." He said, "What do you
right,
want? What are you pursuing?" I said, "I want to
right,
launch an education. My first venture was in education."
right,
And he said, "Where are you raising capital from?" I
right,
said, "I have raised capital from friends and family."
right.
That's when he introduced the concept of angel investor. This is way back, when
Interesting.
probably the Indian angels was at a nascent stage.
Right,
From there, I think I covered a long journey.
right,
For some time, I was associated with a venture capital fund, did a couple of companies, and I met my co-founders at IIM Ahmedabad.
right,
So I was invited by IIM Ahmedabad to judge their annual business plan competition called Master Plan,
right,
and that's where I met Utkarsh and Deepak. And when I looked at Utkarsh, he had the same fire that I had when I started my entrepreneurial
right,
journey.
right,
And I told him, I don't know whether you're going to win this business plan competition or not, but
right,
there's an opportunity where we can work together.
right,
So that's how we came together. And today, the four founders have built this company into the largest, not just largest test prep, but today very proud to say that we are India's largest vernacular edtech company. There is no one else
wow,
who is bigger than us as far as vernacular and edtech is concerned. So in
right,
that sense, we are in a very dominating position as far as Bharat is concerned.
right. Very interesting, Karan. I think that's I like that confidence in the entire introduction that you've given, right? And I think there is a lot of hard work which has gone into, and a lot of effort which has gone into bringing that side of you out, right, as an entrepreneur, right? But that's an incredible background, Karan, by the way, right? And I think the possibly the diversity that the family that you talk of, and your father being in armed forces, right? I think the diversity that you've been through, right, in terms of traveling every 2 years, possibly is also in a certain way would have helped you build Pariksha, right? And that's my sense.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So I think even way before I started, one of the advantages that probably my brother and I, both of us, were carrying was that we had lived all across this country,
Right,
and sometimes even the remotest part of our country.
right.
So somewhere we were touched by the pain points. We had seen that actually happening in front of our eyes. So
Right.
yes, it definitely did
So,
that.
okay. So, Karan, to kind of set the context right, right? Give me a sense of how large is this opportunity, right? I mean, everybody is known that the test prep market is something that it's been established fact, right? That test prep market is one of the largest and the most exciting opportunities that EdTech ever offered, right? And there have been many players, who've been and there have been players who've been trying to crack the JE market. There have been players who've been trying to crack the MBA market. People have done it in a physical model. People have done it in a virtual model. So there have been many players in that sort of this thing, right? Help me understand the landscape, in which you operate, and you offer your product and services, right? And the construct of product and services. I think that should be a very good starting point for this conversation, and then of course we lead into other things.
Sure. So like any other entrepreneur, right? We picked up a market where there was no competition,
Right.
right? If you look at test prep in India is broadly dominated by a couple of very well-funded companies,
Mm-hmm.
but they are primarily looking at either the entrance exam like JEE, NEET, CAT, or they are looking at central government or national level job exams like UPSC, Bank PO, Railway. I
Right.
had no intention of competing with these giants head-on at a very early stage in our life. So we
Right.
are looking for an opportunity where we could build strength, we could
Right.
build team, we could acquire knowledge, raise capital. That's when we struck this Bharat opportunity, because at that time nobody was looking at Bharat. Bharat was, even today, Bharat is a very ignored market. You
Right.
know, so that's when we came across this vernacular state government job exam opportunity. We were the first movers in this segment. We quickly moved. We started from Madhya Pradesh and then gradually we scaled. Today, I'm very proud to say that we cover over 15 states.
Right.
And I have learned it today that we have launched the eighth language as well.
Wow.
So 15 states and eight languages. We are the largest in that sense.
Right.
If you look at test prep can be broadly divided in three segments in our country: the
Sure.
entrance exam, the central government job exam, and the state government job exam.
Right.
The state government job exam, where we started operating, the opportunity was around $2.3 billion when we entered.
Wow.
But if you look at Pariksha, will not restrict itself just to serving the test prep market, the vernacular
Right.
test prep market, but anything and everything that a Bharat youth requires,
Right.
Pariksha will offer. So I keep telling it to all my co-founders that we will not accede even a single inch of Bharat to any other edtech company. Bharat
Interesting.
belongs to us.
Karan, I'm going to come to a lot of those aspects, right? And I think I have a bunch of questions around that aspiration that you have as an organization, as a startup, as a company, right? But tell me more about the state prep, the state competitive exams, right? Or that particular market, right? You said it's a $2.3 billion opportunity, right? And it was something which was possibly not looked at by many players, right? Tell me a
Right.
little more about it, right? How many number of, for example, tests are there? How many people are taking it in a year? Tell me a little more about all of that.
Sure. So, if you look at Bharat, Anshu, there are over 400 exams that are held at the state level in our country.
Sure.
Each large state would have over 20 exams,
Right.
over 20 exams each year, and there are almost 75 million aspirants who
Sure.
just appear for the vernacular state government job exams. I'm very
Right.
judiciously and very responsibly using this word just 75 million.
Right.
Okay, because these guys they do not aspire to go to IITs.
Sure.
They do not want to leave their
Right.
district or state, and that's why they don't apply to a lot of central government job exams.
Right.
So
Right.
primarily their focus is to secure a government job, if possible, within their district. If not within their district, then certainly within their state.
Right.
Most of these exams are vernacular in nature. So you
Right.
go to any state, almost 98% of all the aspirants who will appear for any of these exams, they will write
Right.
the exam in the local language. That
Right.
gives them a certain advantage.
Right.
So if you look at, let's say, Tamil Nadu Police Constable exam, almost 98% of the aspirant who write that exam will give the exam in Tamil.
Absolutely.
Similarly, if you look at jail warden exam in West Bengal, majority of
Right.
people are going to write the exam in Bengali.
Right.
And the other beautiful part is that slowly, Anshu, these exams have started transitioning online.
Right.
Now, look at the irony, and perhaps this irony is an opportunity for us and many other players in the market.
Right.
We are talking about aspirants who are coming from Bharat, tier 2, tier 3, and villages, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, this target market has not seen computers at home or school. These are mobile
Right.
first internet users.
Mm-hmm.
Now, suddenly the state government says that to give the most important exam of your life, you have to sit in front of a computer and give a computer based exam.
Right.
Which they don't even know how to start a computer. And you would
Right.
agree with me that giving exam on a computer and giving exam on a pen and a paper based environment,
It's
these are
very
two
different.
different,
Right.
different environments. So we thought, wow, this market is ignored by other players. They are not looking at because all
Right.
of them are probably chasing the average order value. Because this is a mass price sensitive market, the average
Right.
order value would be slightly less than what you would pay for a central government job exam or the
Right.
national job exam. But it's a huge, 75 million is more than the total population of maybe Germany or France.
Right.
And we
Right.
thought nobody is looking at this. And at the same time, we were cognizant that the other reason why other players are not looking at this market is that this is a very, very tough market.
Right.
This is a very, very tough market. We were not just out there to serve this market in terms of offering them, test prep. We were out there in this market to change the mindset because
Right.
online preparation for this market was a new concept,
Right.
right? For hundreds and thousands of years, we were accustomed to a certain way of learning. And now a guy living in, let's say, Jhabua, which is a tribal district in Madhya Pradesh, or a guy living in Chaubis Pargana,
Right.
or Kasargoda in Karnataka, suddenly you
Right.
say that you don't have to leave your house.
Right.
You have the best of the teachers, best of the teaching pedagogy, best of the content made available on your mobile device.
Right.
So our mission was clear that we want to remove these inequalities. I do not want anybody to come and say, I did not have money. That's why I could not go to coaching institute. Otherwise,
Right.
probably I would have been an inspector. Or there was a no great coaching institute near my place. Otherwise, I would have been a tehsildar. We want to
Right.
remove these inequalities.
Very interesting. Karan, and when you say this, and when you're actually mentioning about the jail warden exams and and the constable exams and stuff like that, right? I mean, honestly speaking, I think us in urban area, we're not even thinking about all of these things, right? And then there's this massive set of people, and while you say that, and of course, then I go back to say my home state, right? Where I start thinking of many exams that are happening at the local levels, right, and things like that, right? And I think it's surprising that this is not something which has occurred to many of us, right, who've been
Right.
educated in a certain setup and then move to say metros and urban areas to kind of go out and work and explore, right? And I kind of understand where you're coming from, right? Karan, when you are actually talking about this particular category, right, of people who are aspiring and who don't necessarily want to move out of say where they are kind of living, where they've grown up, they're looking for opportunities around, right? And they're also looking for government opportunities because it offers certain sort of comfort, we've not been a very supportive country in terms of say giving the entrepreneurial kind of back end and stuff like that, right? And people have looked for comfortable options, right?
Right.
Help me understand. So what have been the early days, right? I mean, distribution, like you said, right? Not a lot of your competitors were even thinking about this, right? Distribution would have been very difficult. When I am actually thinking of what you just saying, I could think of the bookshops that used to be there, that used to sell those question banks and those prep books and stuff like that, right? Which people could sort of buy and prepare for the exams, right? What has that journey been? Tell me a little more about the early phase of the product and how have you evolved?
So, Ashu, let me admit this upfront.
Sure.
Pariksha was not the first company that was trying to make a dent in Bharat. There had been like many companies before us.
Sure.
But almost all of them failed. And they failed because they failed to understand the unique challenges, characteristics of the Bharat market.
Right.
What they're trying to do was impose the India business model, which is Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore on
Right.
Bharat.
Right.
That will not work in Bharat.
Right.
So what we did is, among the 4 founders, 3 of us, we extensively traveled, and we traveled across almost close to 100 smaller towns and cities to better understand the Bharat market.
Right.
And we realized that any company, whether it is edtech or e-commerce, they'll have to solve 5 fundamental problems,
Right.
without which the chances of them succeeding in this market is almost zilch. What are they? First is the trust for anything online is extremely low in Bharat.
Right.
Bharat is a touch and feel market. You would see in companies like Amazon, Flipkart, even they've started appointing these retail agents in villages, right? So to act as a touch and feel. So we knew that there has to be a touch and feel, and there has to be a credibility. So trust and credibility were very important to us.
Right.
Second was that we knew that there's going to be a logistics issue because internet might not be very seamless at all the places.
Right.
Right. We face challenge in urban city. I thought we would definitely face this challenge in the rural.
Right.
I'm talking about 2018, right?
Absolutely.
And the 4th challenge that we had to solve was at that time, the mobile payment or digital payment was not very, very deep in Bharat. People were still, even today, a large part of our Bharat is transacting online, touch and feel. So we thought probably transaction and logistics we can solve with the help of technology. But from where do I build trust and credibility?
Right.
Without trust and credibility, nobody is going to subscribe to anything.
Absolutely.
So we started looking for some business models, and
Right.
we narrowed down on two great business models. Okay, and perhaps these two business models helped us grow rapidly.
Right.
I'm sure you are aware of Coursera. It's a listed company
Right.
now, right? Started by Stanford graduates.
Sure.
We learned a lot from Coursera. We studied
Right.
that company in detail, and if you look at Coursera's journey, that their journey is very similar to our journey.
Right.
The founders were excellent at building a great product, user experience. They knew how to acquire a user,
Right.
but at the same time, they were cognizant that building great content, acquiring great teaching pedagogy is
Right.
not something that they specialize at.
Right.
Right. So they went to Harvard, they went to Stanford, they went to INSEAD and said, guys, why don't you launch your executive education programs online?
Right.
So through association, through partnership, they got great content from Harvard.
Right.
They got great teaching pedagogy from Harvard. They were able
Right.
to leverage the brand name and network of Harvard, right? That's how
Right.
they grew. So I thought if Coursera can do this with education institution like Harvard and Stanford, why
Right.
can't we do the same thing with these brick and mortar coaching institutes that rule the state government job exam market?
Interesting.
So you would have seen there are some large coaching institutes at the state level that have been doing this business for decades, right?
Right.
They understand the content, they understand the exam space, the market extremely well. So
Right.
I thought, why compete? And I'm a strong believer that if you really have to disrupt a market, Anshu, it is always advisable to collaborate with the ecosystem than to compete with them.
Absolutely.
Right. So I thought if I have to grow and serve this market, then I have to have many partners supporting us.
Right.
So we went, and exactly on the Coursera model, we partner with the best coaching institute, the most aspirational ones, the most successful ones at the state level. And now it is a co-branded offering that goes to the market.
Right.
Another company that we greatly learned was Netflix. Netflix is a similar story. Initially, if you look at Netflix, they got content through partnership. They went to Disney, they went to Warner Brothers, Columbia Pictures, and said, guys, why don't you start offering your great content on internet? So far, you guys have been selling your movies in movie theaters, through satellite television, through CDs and DVDs. For the first time, we can start selling your movies on internet.
Right.
So we are not eating into your existing market. We are growing your market pie.
Right.
We are opening a new revenue stream for you.
Interesting.
We told the same thing to these coaching institutes, that I am not eating into your existing market.
Right.
Only at 10%, the affluent ones are able to come to a coaching institute. The remaining 90% are preparing on their own.
Right.
Together, if we come, if we decide to come together, we can serve the remaining 90%.
Right.
At a very affordable price point. So if you look at Pariksha, Anshu, we are solving two fundamental problems of Bharat.
Right.
Accessibility and affordability of great education. That's what we intend to deliver. So whether it is the test prep or whether it is K-12, you pick up any segment, any category, but these are primary two issues: accessibility and affordability of great learning experiences. What we are set out to deliver.
So fantastic. So when you are, and I'm gonna dig a little deeper in this particular aspect, right? So when you say that you're going out and partnering with the local institutions, right? What is that relationship like, right? Are they coming onto the platform and they're teaching, and you acquire the students digitally? Or the content is essentially prepared by the Pariksha team, which kind of is disseminated across their existing base of students, who could possibly pursue it at home in a hybrid format. What's the relationship like, right? What's the distribution like?
So let me take you back to your school or your college days, because the journey of every student is almost similar no matter where they are, where they were studying or for what exam they were preparing.
Right.
So let me take you back to our college days. Whenever we prepared for any competitive exam, there were three components. First was the learning component, where we learn. Second was the practice. We come back home and you do that practice session to strengthen the concepts, the understanding of the concepts.
Right.
And third was we would give these mock tests to assess our performance level, right? Where do we stand in terms of competition? Because today examinations are all about your relative performance, not your absolute performance.
Right.
And each of these three components would contribute equally to your preparation. 33% maybe to learning, 33% to practice, 33% to mock tests. So we thought that we are great at building practice and mock test. Okay, today there is technology, there is a lot of data sciences, analytics, which helps us make great, very relevant, real exam like content. So we have a hybrid content strategy where for videos, that is synchronous and asynchronous classes, we go and partner with the leading coaching institute.
Right.
Okay. And for practice and mock test, it is our own IP, content, which is created in-house.
Right.
We have a revenue share. We work on a revenue share model. So that's another beauty. One of the largest players in our country, I cannot reveal the name, but he reached out to me and he said, I really love your business model, wherein there is no fixed cost, right? You do not have to spend money on building a great content, because that great content is already there. And I said, why build a great content? It is already there. Why reinvent the wheel? Right? Why not just capture the market and capture the market and serve these guys who are desperately waiting for something like this to happen?
Right.
So it is a revenue share agreement, exactly on the lines of what Netflix or Coursera would do. Right. There is no fixed cost, and that's why we were able to scale quickly. I can launch a state in less than 7 days.
Wonderful, wonderful. Karan, you highlighted on the trust environment, right? And I think trust is very, very important when you're operating in a digital, or you're a digital first model, right? And I think as soon as you start talking about Bharat, right, touch and feel is very critical, right? And I think many people are kind of grappling with that problem, right? Of course, there are many other problems, right? And I would love to discuss some of those problems with you as we go along. But touch and feel is very, very important, right? How did you create that trust relationship between, say, institutions that already existed? Because, if you look at the institutions model, right, or a college, or people in the coaching industry, right? If you look at that model, it's a highly profitable model, right? You basically have just about very little human resource cost, because there's one person or two people who are driving that essentially that institution. Second is real estate cost, right? Which is essentially in form of rentals and some functional cost, right? Which is possibly a OPEX, right? And you have batches which are 200 people, 300 people, 400 people, maybe more, right? So these are institutions which are essentially extremely profitable, right? They don't necessarily have a need to go out and sort of partner with a player which is relatively new, right? So how was that relationship? How did that, what were the early days like? I mean, today, of course, you're in a very different zone, right? People would know of you. I'm sure you have feet on street, which is going out and sort of building those relationships. But what were the early days like? I mean, how did you go on to build that kind of a trust relationship?
So I think a lot of these other players had created a very conducive environment for us to go out in the market and grow.
Right.
First was the initiative by the government.
Right.
In almost all states, they were adopting this digital transformation. Exams were being online. So there was a huge pressure on these coaching institutes. Students who were enrolled in these coaching institutes, they started asking the coaching institute owners that ultimately we have to give an online exam.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you offer us some product or some technology wherein at least we can practice for an online environment? Right. So some of these coaching institutes, they did try to build their own solution, but you would agree that building a product requires a different kind of DNA, right?
And I think many of them, I can actually recall, many of them were actually doing CDs, and they started to record videos and all of that, right?
Right. So some of them, they did try to build their own applications and platforms. They failed miserably. Then some of them, they tried to take services of other players who were trying to offer kind of SaaS solution, but even that did not work, because these are teachers essentially, right? Their core is in imparting knowledge. It is not in managing that product or scaling that application, acquiring users, right? That's not their core. So two factors. And the third factor was that they knew that sooner these, larger sharks in the edtech space, they would just eat them up if they don't adopt technology.
Right.
So let's understand a coaching institute, for any coaching institute at the state level, they have great brand name, because for over 2 decades, they've been serving that market. They were given hundreds and thousands of selections. They've got great content, great teaching pedagogy, great teachers, everything. The only thing that was missing from their arsenal was technology. And then a technology or a product built by IITians was being made available to them.
Right.
We were not competing with them. We were collaborating. We were empowering them. We were not out there to finish them.
Right.
We were out there to arm them so that they could fight the giants, the other giants who were, operating that space. So I think a lot of factors played in our favor. The exams going online, competition from other edtech players, demand from student community, and a collaborative model where they knew that we will only grow if the coaching institute grows.
Right.
So our destinies were interlinked, right? So that helped us. And first 2-3 coaching institutes were difficult to crack, but then people understood the value that we were delivering.
Right.
And then there was a time when coaching used to come and sit in front of us, and they used to request that, can you onboard us? But we have been very, very selective. We only partner with the best coaching institute at the state. And there is a mechanism, mechanism that we follow when we identify the best, the most leading, the most coaching institute.
Interesting. Tell me a little more about it.
So we look at their historical performance in last 3 years, how many selections they have given, how many centers do they have? What is the background of the founder who started that coaching institute? Okay. what is the background of the teachers who are teaching them, how open are they in terms of adopting technology, how many students are being enrolled in their different branches across the state, what is their price point. So all these factors put together, we assign a score to every coaching institute, and based on that coaching institute which scores the highest, we go and partner with them.
Interesting. There's this very interesting method to the madness that you created, right? And I think that helps you possibly I think navigate better, prioritize, and I think also acquire, right? And get into a relevant relationship, which is a win-win for both the stakeholders. Karan, which have been some of the key or best performing states for you, right? I mean, where you navigated much faster than others.
I'm glad you asked this. And allow me to share a small story with you.
Please.
Lot of my friends from the VC community, when we were getting into this space, they want that current Bharat is a very tough market. You should not get into this space. Find a easier market, right? Because if you look at our country, we are one country, but in terms of market, probably we have 37 different markets.
Absolutely.
And the reason I'm saying 37 is that we have got 36 states plus union territories, but UP is so large that UP East and UP West can be categorized as two different markets.
There are 4 markets in UP.
Yes, perhaps. Then probably we can increase the number to maybe 39.
Yeah.
So, and each market is very different, right? I grew up in a cantonal environment, and everybody was coming from South was a Madrasi at that time, right? But that's not the case. You would be surprised that even the Hindi-speaking belt is very, very different. Haryana is very different from Bihar.
Right.
Bihar is very, very different from Rajasthan.
Right.
Tamil Nadu is very, very different from Kerala. Very, very different. And you would understand this difference only when you go deep in this market.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay? So a lot of warning came to our doorstep that you are trying to serve a lot of markets.
Right.
Do that. Find a state, but let's just identify UP and just serve UP. UP itself can make you a unicorn. The market is so large. Right. It has more population than Germany.
Right.
So, but we were hell-bent because our mission was to ensure that we create a level playing field for every student, every aspirant across Bharat. We would not restrict ourselves to just one state.
Right.
Today, Pariksha is present in North, South, East, West. The 4 fastest growing states is Madhya Pradesh, which is a Hindi-speaking, Maharashtra, which is a Marathi-speaking, Tamil Nadu, which is a Tamil-speaking, and West Bengal, which is a Bengali-speaking state.
Right.
So the reason I'm using the language is that we have been able to grow company across different territories and across different cultures and languages.
Right. Very interesting, Karan. I think that also talks about the DNA that you possibly building this organization with. I think which is very culturally diverse, and I think kind of very product focused, right? Which is geared to crack into the markets. And I think there are some bits of what you said, right, are a reflection of how you're cracking the market. I think you're really productizing, institutionalizing a lot of what you're doing, right? I think which only helps you better in terms of cracking these markets, right? While of course the regional complexities kind of exist, right? And my sense is I think you need to solve that more at a content level than at an execution and acquisition level, right? At an operational level. Karan, you've grown, right? And you've grown phenomenally, right? You've gone on and raised capital as well, right? Give me a sense of the numbers that you're dealing with right now. How many aspirants are there on the platform? How many partners are there? You've gone on to raise capital, right? How has that been for you? So since its inception till say 2019, and then I'm going to discuss 2020 in a different in a different question, right? But how is the journey been?
So, Anshu, I think the advantage with us was that I had some prior experience, and that worked in our favor. So from day one, we were a very capital efficient company.
Mm-hmm.
We had this clear idea that if not required, we'll not go out in the market and raise capital.
Sure.
Okay. And if required, we'll raise only as much as it is required, because sometimes too much of money at an early stage, it spoils you, right?
Sure.
Then you are trying to solve all the problem with the help of money.
Right.
Which
that's a very interesting way that you put it.
Right. And someday probably when we sit over a cup of coffee or dinner, I'll share that I have, along with my co-founders, traveled to the furthest places in our country, and my co-passenger used to be a goat.
Right.
How many entrepreneurs would have a co-passenger as a goat? But those were lovely days, lovely days. So we were a very capital efficient company from day one. The initial capital came from a senior of mine from Symbiosis. He put in some initial capital. Right. And then as and when we required, we reached out to our network, and I raised capital from a lot of angel investors.
Sure.
Our first kind of institutional angel round was from VCATS, where Apur Sharma, we all know him. because of the OYO association, and now
Sure.
he's built a lot of other companies, helped build a lot of other
Right.
companies. He was very kind to understand.
Sure.
The very first time we went out in the market, we had 4 term sheets. We were
Right.
very fortunate.
Wonderful.
And I had known Apoor for very, very long, and I had known how he helps companies scale and build. So we raised our first angel, the official angel round from VCATS. And after that, we were very, very fortunate that I met Ashwin,
Right.
Ashwin from Bharat Fund,
Sure.
an event in Bangalore.
Yeah. And that was last year we were together.
Yes. So you were also there at that event. Probably you were hosting the event. Right?
I was, yeah.
Yes. So I am a strong believer in serendipity. Serendipity. I met my co-founders, in a similar manner, and I met Ashwin there.
Right.
And if you look at Bharat and all the partners, Ashwin and all the partners, they have great insight, great understanding of the Bharat market, right? They are hands-on operators, right? They like to back entrepreneurs with a big vision and who are solving a fundamental problem. Not a good to have a not a good to have product, but a must to have product, right? Solving fundamental.
Very need driven and a very need driven.
Very need driven, right. So very quickly, Ashwin and Sanjay, they both understood the value proposition. In fact, I had to say very little to them. In fact, they understood more. And today, there's a huge learning that we all of us get from them. So very fortunate that we met them, and they were our first institutional investors, along with LV Angel, where we have Nimesh Kampani. You all know him, right?
Yeah.
Who runs the LV Angel Fund. At that time also we received multiple term sheet. So we could pick and choose. We were fortunate. So today we are very, very proud and very fortunate that we have Bharat Fund, where Ashwin and Sanjay have backed us. We have LV Angel Fund, where Nimesh Kampani has backed us, and we have Apoor Sharma, and then a lot of VCs who are invested in individual capacity in a company.
Right.
Perhaps we were the first company to raise capital from INSEAD Angels.
Interesting.
So far, I think the only company, right? At the business school from France.
Right.
So a lot of VCs have invested in our company in the individual capacity. They really understood the value in this Bharat market and the need that we are serving.
Very interesting. And how's the performance been? How have the numbers been? I mean, how many students are you or aspirants? Let me put it this way: not students, but aspirants are you catering to right now? How many partners? How many individual cities are you in? What's the scale right now?
So we crossed over 4 million, aspirants who are using our platform. And now we are close to 150,000 paid subscribers. We were close to that. Imagine, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, nobody could think that this Bharat market would actually pay. Yeah. So people used to tell me that current, Bharat is a very price sensitive market.
Right.
The purchasing power is very, very low there. But that statement is not correct in totality. If you go deep in this market, you would understand that the selective purchasing power is very, very high.
Absolutely.
You and me perhaps would spend money any and everywhere, right? These guys precisely know where to spend money.
Right.
Okay? Forgive me for making this statement.
No, please.
But you would have seen some cases where the Bharat market spends exorbitantly on marriages, on education, on buying gold. In fact, if I have to share some data points, 66% of all the gold that is bought in a country is not in India; it is in Bharat. Right. And government job is such a job that for that people will bend over backward.
Absolutely.
They are willing to spend any money. Now we have students from remotest district, Kasargoda, 24th Pargana, Dhulia, Jhabua, and people are paying as high as 30,000 rupees. Nobody could imagine that this Bharat market, the tribal districts, I'm not even talking about rural, I'm talking about tribal now. They would pay 30,000 rupees for an online program. We've been able to demonstrate that. The aspiration of this market is very, very high, extremely high.
Interesting. Karan, tell me this, right? So currently, typically, a user signs up for one prep module, or typically do they do it for many of them, right? So how does that work out, right? So typically, what's the LTV of a customer in that? How do you measure that? I mean, if you can share that with us, but broadly, if you could give me a sense, I think that'll be helpful.
I'm glad you asked this, because this is another thing that most of the people when we started were not aware. Everybody used to assume that the lifetime value of a customer in Bharat is very, very small.
Right.
But I'm sure now there are a lot of people who would have read a lot of reports. The propensity of this market to appear for multiple exams is very, very high. Some time back, I was on a call with a VC who was from Harvard Business School, and I said, "Forgive me for making this statement,
Right.
but the selection rate at Harvard Business School is between 10 to 12%.
Right.
The selection rate for any government job exam in our country is less than 1%.
You're right.
I keep joking with my other co-founders who are from IT that perhaps it is easier to get into IT where the selection rate is 1.4 to 1.5%. It is
Right.
difficult to become a tehsildar or a jail warden in a country. Selection rate is always less than 1%.
Absolutely.
And let me quote some real numbers.
Sure.
Let's look at Maharashtra, from where we are operating today.
Right.
Maharashtra government has announced vacancies for police constables.
Mhm.
There are 8,000 vacancies and there are 12 lakh applicants. Look at the ratio.
My God.
Right? So less than 1% of all the applicants who appear for the exam, they are able to crack the exam. What becomes of the remaining 99%? They start preparing for the next exam announced by the state.
Right.
What we have seen in our experience, and also there's a Bloomberg report, that on an average, an aspirant from Bharat will appear for at least 4 exams, and for 7 years they keep appearing for these exams. I'm sure you would have seen a movie which was
a web series, very recently,
where जवानी में लोग तैयारी करने के लिए घुसते हैं और जब वो निकलते हैं तब तक वो बेचारे बुजुर्ग हो चुके हैं.
Right.
That is the craze to secure a government job. And the other good thing about good thing for us and unfortunate for Bharat is that apart from government jobs, there are no good private sector job opportunities available in
Right.
Bharat.
Right.
And if these guys, they migrate to a city like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, because of their low communication challenge and low skill set, they end up becoming Ola Uber drivers or restaurants. That's not a great life that anybody aspires to have, right? So for them, good life means to become a police constable within their district or a state.
Right.
Or a tehsildar, or a jail warden, or a forest guard. And trust me, Anshu, before we went to this market, even we had no idea that the opportunity is so large. We used to think that probably the banking exam or the JEE exam is one of the largest. But in each state, teacher exam, you will have over 1 million applicants, and majority of them are girls who wants to become a primary school teacher because that's their only dream.
Right.
And if you talk about constable, sometime back there was a news article also. Just in Madhya Pradesh, there were 40 lakh applicants for police constable. 40 lakh, 4 million. And I'm sure you would have read about the Indian Railways exam. 2.7 crore applicants for 90,000 vacancies, the largest online exam ever. 2.7 crore is more than the total population of Australia.
Right.
That's the opportunity that we are talking about.
No, I think that, Karan, Karan, that's a phenomenal opportunity that you kind of highlighted, right? And I think I kind of understand where you're coming from. I think the fact that there are very little private sector jobs available, and I think in the government setup, the kind of certainty that is there, right, in terms of being employed all throughout, comfort that comes with it, and all of that. I think, in fact, even the social standing for that matter, right? I think there is a very different kind of a motivation to be part of a government ecosystem, right? And I think that is not something which is going to go away. I think the way we operate in many layers, I think Bharat, rural India, all of that mid-level, tier markets, right, will always aspire for a market like that. Karan, I would want to come to 2020 as an opportunity, right? This is something that I've asked you in a previous conversation as well, and I'm going to kind of reiterate this question, right? 2020 has been a very unreal year, right? It kind of disrupted many things around us, right? It disrupted the private sector as well, right? Where possibly the private sector has moved into massive adoption of technology, right? Which essentially means that everything is going to be far more efficient and stuff like that, right? Which also means that possibly the requirement of job is going to shrink further, right? Which essentially means that people are going to be aspiring for more government jobs, right? What has been the shift that has happened, right? I mean, how has this particular phase been for you in terms of jump, in terms of numbers of subscription, people who are aspiring to sort of, part of the ecosystem? Has this been unexceptional? Has this been exceptional? Or has this been on a consistent pattern that you've been seeing in a pre-COVID environment?
I think you put it very aptly. The private sector has shrinked a bit, right?
Sure.
And going forward, also the trend suggests that it is going to shrink further because there is going to be more automation, right?
Right.
That means there is going to be more competition for every job.
Right.
If you look at our government in last 2 years, they haven't announced any big recruitment drive at any level, whether it is the central government or at the state level.
Right.
So there is a lot of pent-up demand. And very soon we would see lot of these state governments releasing notifications to announce these vacancies.
Right.
So I think with this, we are very confident that the number of aspirants, they're going to increase.
Right.
Right. And we have seen this trend. There was an article some time back that a lot of engineers who are working with software companies, they applied for peon exam in Tamil Nadu, right? Clerk exam in Tamil Nadu. These are guys who are working with some of these blue chip companies.
Right.
The government sector job always offers you a sense of security, and it is a matter of prestige, as you rightly said, a couple of minutes ago, that there are a lot of other perks associated with the government. So we are going to see a large number of aspirants, much larger than what we had seen before, maybe 2019 or 20, as soon as the government announces the exam. That means more competition, and that means players like us will be in more demand. Right?
Interesting.
So that's one trend that we are seeing. Second is, I think the mindset have changed. Mindset of the student, the aspirant community, as well as the entire education ecosystem. Like on our last panel, you would have seen, you when you were hosting that, somebody made a statement that today almost 100% of the education institutions are online.
Right.
And even once things become normal, it will not happen that all of them will again go back in the traditional brick and mortar state. We believe that 60 to 70% will still have a very serious online presence, and that's where companies like us and others will serve and make an impact in this market.
Interesting, Karan. I have one more question around the same same lines and same thoughts. Right. What has happened is that while of course we talk about Bharat, right? For the longest time, Bharat was underserved when it came to exposure and content, right? What has also happened is, with say platforms like Jio, kind of the emergence of Jio, right, and cheap data and cheap handsets and stuff like that, right? The exposure has increased many folds, right? So while of course it's something which has worked in your favor, it's also something which has given them a very large exposure to many other things, right? In terms of being able to build a livelihood around doing certain activities that they never thought that they could kind of do and achieve or whatever, right? So while there is a segment which is aspiring for being in the government service and job, right, there are many of them who are thinking of gig, right? Who are thinking of skills, right? Who are now thinking of, say, being a fashion designer, for example, right? Who are, and they could possibly go on to, some of them could possibly go on to become micro entrepreneurs, right? They're thinking of distribution. So they're thinking of many such possibilities, right? Does that mean, your responsibility as a player is going to change, where you right now, say, for example, training them and gearing them for a competitive setting, to being more around knowledge and awareness, right? So do you think your role is going to change as you go along for this particular ecosystem?
Absolutely. So I made a statement, and I made it with full responsibility that
Sure.
there is not even a single inch of Bharat that we will cede to anybody else. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Bharat just doesn't need government job exam preparation.
Sure.
It needs a gamut of other things.
Right.
So what we have also done, and to a great extent, I can attribute that to the COVID wave, is that we have also entered into vernacular upskilling courses.
Right.
Okay. We were supposed to do this. Maybe we would, in a good scenario, we would have done this in a 1.5 year. But because of the COVID, everything happened so quickly. So now we have launched vernacular upskilling courses. Started with the language course. English is a very highly aspirational language in Bharat. Everybody wants to converge in that language, right? So we have started with that, and gradually you would see that on Pariksha we'll be adding more. Learn digital marketing maybe in Tamil, or as you rightly said, fashion designing in Bangla. Okay. So there are a lot of upskilling courses that Pariksha is going to launch in next 6 months. So government job exam space was one category that we are operating in. Now we are expanding our wings.
Right.
The same user, we are growing our TAM. The same user also needs upskilling, right? Only 1% of them, or 2% or 3% of them will be able to secure a government job. The others, they still need some skills, some avenues to continue living and take care of their families. So Pariksha is getting into vernacular upskilling. We will get into vocational courses. We will get into K-12, but our focus is going to be Bharat.
Interesting. So I think that's a common denominator across all of these opportunities that you kind of evaluating is what I sense from what you say. Karan, there's something very interesting, and this is something that we discussed offline, right? Where you've kind of spoken that also around COVID, a little bit for COVID, around the COVID times, right? we've actually gone out and partnered with many institutions, right? And I think the number is fairly large, right? It's upwards of 250, if I'm not wrong, right? And that's something which has happened very recently, right? Tell me a little more about it, right? What's that particular piece? How are you building that particular piece, right? What's this relationship all about, right? What's the future of this particular association?
So the Bharat problem is so deep and so wide. It is
Right.
so deep rooted and it has been going for so long that
Sure.
just by doing one thing, you cannot solve this problem.
Right.
And if you ask us, we are on a mission to remove this problem from this ecosystem. We want to remove the miseries that the youth, the student or the aspirant in Bharat is suffering because of lack of accessibility, affordability, and quality. Right.
Sure.
So we have a three-pronged strategy. Vernacular app was just one of them.
Right.
One of them. But as I stated at the start of our conversation, that I'm a strong believer in collaboration.
Right.
We will gain the momentum of the entire ecosystem. We'll bring all of them together to solve this problem. It is not possible for just Pariksha to solve this. So I think I am making this statement. You would read. So you are the first one to, in fact, know about this. There is a press release due, but since this is going to be live in next 7 days, so I can probably share. We are launching India Education Stack, and we are the first company to do that.
Very interesting.
India Education Stack. You would have seen India Stack. You would have seen the Health Stack. Pariksha is launching India Education Stack, the first ever to do it, right? Now, a lot of people think that probably the problem of Bharat can be solved just with the help of technology. Technology is just one aspect, right?
Sure.
You would have seen a lot of SaaS players in the market today. You would have seen a lot of LMS, ERP players in the market. You would have seen a lot of automation content guys in the market.
Right.
I'm saying an education institution requires all of this and more. All of this and more, right? They want microfinancing, right? They want loan. They want insurance. They want EMI payments for their students who are living in schools. Today, a lot of players who are serving this in the urban market, but we are talking about Bharat. So Pariksha is coming with an India Education Stack where technology is just one aspect of offering. Whether you look at branding, whether you look at student acquisition, teacher acquisition, content delivery, establishing the identity of the student, maintaining the sanctity of the examination, helping them with the insurance, payments, EMI, loan, early salary, all of this would be made available to each and every education institution, irrespective of their size or location. So whether it is a one-man coaching institute or a large university operating in Bharat, all of them will have all of this available.
Right. So Karan, does that mean the aspiration is changing, right? From being a B2C company, right? Of course, there was a certain mechanism that you had of delivery, right? But now are you moving into a B2B play? I think is that the aspiration where you're saying that, listen, we're going to be B2B first, right? And it's going to be the job of, say, our partner, who's going to be the last mile to acquire the user, and we will continue to empower them to serve the user better. Is there a different relationship which is kind of evolving?
So our primary focus is still going to be B2C.
Right.
80% of our resources, energy will be there. But I think we have built a great, gamut of services, technology and services. And why just restrict it to one company?
Right.
We are out there to disrupt the market. So the more the people use it, the better it is for the ecosystem. Right. And so you will see very soon, hundreds and thousands of these education institutions using our platform. So it is somebody was asking me the same question, that are you like pivoting? I said, no, I'm not pivoting. It is called gradual natural progression. If you want to serve this market and if you want to eradicate this problem, you can't do it by doing just one thing, which is a vernacular app, right? You want to channelize the power of the entire ecosystem, let all of them come and eradicate this problem. And if we could contribute in that mission, nothing like it. So this technology piece, the India Education Stack, technology plus services, will empower all the other education institutions across our country to deliver a much superior experience, outcome-based experience to all the students, irrespective of what exam, course, or program they are studying for.
Very interesting, and I think I understand where you're coming from, right?
And there is one more. There is one more. I'm sure you would have seen. That Bharat is all about blended learning. We have to facilitate that, right? Bharat is still far away from just a mere technology-enabled learning. The touch and feel still has to be there. So Pariksha's three-pronged strategies where we look at the vernacular app, we look at India Education Stack, and we look at blended learning. All three of them are moving in the right pace. And again through collaboration and partnerships.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think, I had this, I had a question, right? Which, what are the next 2 years like, right? But I think you've answered a lot of that any which way. But I think what I like particularly about what you're highlighting, Karan, is that, there's an ecosystem approach that you take, right? There are opportunities that I have looked at, right? And I think this is an offshoot of the question that, or the answer that you gave, right? Which is making everything available, right? Within the Bharat ecosystem, right? But do you think, I mean, of course, there is one thing which is being discussed, which is around embedded finance, right? That, whatever you're doing as a primary activity, you build in elements where you are, cross-selling some products, right? Because you have a certain understanding of the consumer, right? But as soon as you start looking at Bharat, right, the biggest of all problems around, say, for example, the fintech ecosystem, the lending ecosystem, right, or even the insurance ecosystem, right, that has been there is, is unpredictability in incomes, right? Because a large part of that is dependent on agrarian income. Second is there is very little digital footprint, right, which essentially makes it very, very difficult for going out and lending, for example, right? The method of lending is very, very archaic in that sense, right? Do you think these are possibilities? I mean, do you think you are adding a very different layer of complexity in your core offering by getting into that stack, or do you think that there are certain things, there are systemic changes that are happening which will possibly enable you to deliver this better, if not in near future, possibly about a year and a half down the line? This is going to help you in achieving those those numbers, that aspiration that you have of having a very holistic platform available for the consumer. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so if we look at Bharat, I'm sure most of the things were not happening because there was no clear visibility, right? There was a major issue with access to data, a data which was right at the same time which was actionable, right? That data was not available. Now, when we are doing India Education Stack, we will be precisely solving this problem. With the help of India Education Stack, we'll be able to offer these insights to a lot of other players whose core business is, let's say, lending or insurance. Okay. So Pariksha is not going to get into all of this space. Why? Again, let's collaborate. There are other giants who are doing this wonderfully. But till yesterday, they did not have access to this data and information of Bharat. If we make that available through this India Education Stack, nothing stops them. Imagine today we are talking about offering insurance. Again, that is not my core area. But offering insurance to a teacher who's teaching at a school for 35 rupees, it was not available to him. Now, we are not that insurance company. The insurance company is somebody else. Is again raised massive amount of investment, but they're able to take that decision based on the information data that we are able to share, again with the permission of the partner coaching institution or the education institution, right? But this kind of ecosystem did not exist in Bharat. We are building this. So that's what I'm saying, that alone will not be able to solve this problem. But collectively, if the collective forces of the ecosystem, they come together, I think we can very soon eradicate this problem, and that's the mission.
Very interesting, Karan. I'm going to come back to this question. This is slightly more cliche question. I think you've answered a lot of this already. But what are the next 2 years like, right? So Bharat Stack, I understand, India Education Stack. India Education Stack is something that you are kind of launching, right? But what are the next 2 years like, right? What are some of the things that we see? So, I mean, you're building this ecosystem where you're bringing in many, many players who can now kind of offer through you to Bharat, right? And there is a certain ecosystem play that you're building, right? But on your core products, right? How do you see that play out in the next 2 years?
So I think two things are happening. One is that we are growing in our vision. That is very, very important for any startup. I remember I was having a discussion with a VC, and he said the largest Indian edtech company, when they came to make their first pitch, the TAM that they talked about today, their market value is more than the TAM. Right. So it is very, very important for any great entrepreneur to continuously grow their vision. At the same time, they should also have a path to achieve that vision. So one is our thinking process is growing. In fact, yesterday we were having a discussion in our company where we are talking about the Goliath and the David story. So we are the David, and you know who the Goliath is. So I told them that that giant, that CEO was exactly at my place 7 years ago. Right. At that time, probably he had envisioned that I'm going to build the world's largest edtech company. Exactly 7-8 years, or maybe even lesser than that, you would see Pariksha in the same league. So we aspire to be the world's largest edtech company.
Right.
At least in terms of thinking, nothing should stop an entrepreneur from thinking that big.
Right.
You can't
Absolutely.
think big, you can't make big, right?
Right.
So one is on our thought process. I'll attribute 50% to that.
Right.
Second is we are understanding our customers in more depth. We are a very
Right.
customer-centric organization.
Right.
On daily basis, we strive how do we solve their problem?
Right.
How do we increase the outcome for them? And for most of our users, till yesterday, when we were just a vernacular test web app, the outcome was cracking the exam.
Right.
Okay. Now, since we have increased our scope, it is also about how do we equip them so that they can create their own maybe businesses, micro businesses
Right.
that you talked about, or
Right.
some kind of income to support their families.
Right.
So a greater focus on customers, increasing our vision, going deeper into solving these problems, increasing the quantum of the outcome. If till
Right.
yesterday, let's say only 20% were positively impacted, we want to increase
Right.
that to 30%, 40%. So in next 2 years, I believe we will be a force to reckon with, and the largest edtech
Right.
company in Bharat.
Very interesting. What are some of the key metrics that you're going to be chasing? I mean, I know that's a. I mean, you can very, at a macro level, you could give me a sense.
So I think the most important for us is the outcome.
Right.
We want to increase the quantum, the percentage of the outcome, not just the percentage, but even the absolute number
Right.
drastically. We today, if you look at Pariksha is able to deliver a 500% better outcome than most of the other players. We
Right.
want to increase that further.
Right.
Maybe take it to 2,000 or 2,500. So a large number of people who are using Pariksha should be government officers, government servants tomorrow.
Right.
A large number of people who are using Pariksha should be micro entrepreneurs
Right.
tomorrow. So first focus is clearly on the outcome.
Right.
Second is we want to increase our reach. In next 2 years, we are hoping that we should be able to serve 20 to 25 million students across Bharat.
Interesting. Right.
That's the second number that we are chasing. Third is that in next 2 years, we want to empower 5,000 plus these education institutions,
Right.
irrespective of their size. And I think collectively, if you look at these 5,000 education institutions plus Pariksha's direct reach of around 25 million users being served in next 2 years, the total impact size that I see just in Bharat would be over 100 million. Right? We are talking about a population of 277 million students and aspirants in Bharat. I think of 50% of that in next 2 years will be directly or indirectly being positively impacted because of Pariksha.
Wonderful, wonderful, Karan. That's a beautiful aspiration, and that's such an inspiring aspiration, right? And I think that is going to motivate a lot of founders who are going to be listening to this, right? And I think the kind of scale that you're kind of imagining, that you're working towards, and I think that the kind of targets that you've set out for yourself is absolutely phenomenal, right? And that's the kind of motivation and that's the kind of focus that one needs to sort of be driving, when you have a canvas which is as large as say Bharat is, right? Karan, my last question, which is actually more, say your advice, suggestions to other founders, right? You mentioned something about, very efficient way of operating, right? And raising capital as you require, right? Which essentially means that you're very calibrated in terms of pretty much everything that you're doing, right? So you're thinking profits first, or you're thinking cash flows first. You're prioritizing in that order, right? What are some of your, I'd say, key tips, right, for many founders that are working, today building, right, and there is a set of entrepreneurs as well, who starts to think that money can solve for this and money can solve for that, right? But that's not how truly you kind of build a business, a sustainable business, right? You have to think more operationally, more optimally, right? What are your 2 or 3 suggestions, right, to founders, while they're building this?
So I think the first one would be around team, and I think this would be common across entrepreneurs. You have to have the right set of people working with you from day one. And my suggestion would be that if you could have people who have some prior work experience
Right.
before they jump into the startup bandwagon, it will help you greatly. But there is no substitute for a great founding team. So I think that would be the first. Second is don't shy away from discussing your ideas with a lot of entrepreneurs. They have this inhibition that if I go and share my idea, probably somebody might copy it.
Right.
That if ideas could fly, then everybody would be a billionaire, right? Unfortunately,
Right.
that doesn't happen.
Right.
Second is, I think the way we estimate the market when the entrepreneurs, I think I also did this mistake when I started my entrepreneurial journey. The way we look at market is very, very different from the way the market would be in reality once you cross the 2 or 3 years of your journey.
Right.
So great founding team, find the right kind of people, look at a large opportunity, look at a problem which is actually a need-based problem.
Right.
If you really want to build a substantial business. And the other is outcome. No matter what business you are into, if you are not delivering the outcome that you are set out to deliver, then for you to survive, sustain, and grow
Right.
is almost impossible. So, team, large market size, and find a need-based problem.
Karan, it was a pleasure to have you with us. I would have wanted this conversation to go on, right? And I think I would particularly want to have you very soon with us, where we can actually sit down and and talk more about how you're slicing the market, right? Because that's a very very interesting piece, right? I think given the regional complexities that we have, right? I think that would have been an interesting area to sort of dabble with. But I look forward to having you very soon with us and covering those aspects in the follow up conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashu. It was lovely talking to you. Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure, Karan. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you.